They said it was just practical, that I had plenty of space. But what they really meant was, my life wasn't mine anymore. They'll be moving into your house next month, my mother announced over dinner. Her tone as casual as if she were commenting on the weather. Perfect, I replied, forcing a smile. I'll start packing this weekend. The next morning, I called a realtor. My name is Camille. I am Chigiste, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the family safety net, always there to catch the fall, but never the one anyone worried about. I was dependable, reliable, invisible. Meanwhile, my older brother Dylan, now 33, has always been the star of the show. The golden child, the one they moved heaven and earth for. And me? I was the backup plan, the fallback, the one they expected to always figure it out. But that chapter of my life? It was about to close for good. A lifetime of being the afterthought. My entire life has been one long, painful reminder. I was never the favorite. Dylan, my older brother by 3 years, was always the chosen one. The golden boy, the one they bent over backwards for. And me? I was just there, the invisible daughter, the dependable one, the one they never had to worry about. I was the plan B, the contingency. But at some point, something inside me cracked. And I mean really cracked, not a loud, dramatic break. More like a quiet final snap. And no, it wasn't when I overheard them telling Grandpa that Dylan should get the inheritance because he struggles with stability, while I'd always land on my feet. It wasn't when they skipped my college graduation, something I'd worked years for, because Dylan had a community softball game that day. It wasn't even when I lent them $5,000 to bail Dylan and his wife out of their third financial meltdown in just 2 years. No, the moment I broke, it was when they served me up like a sacrificial lamb. Like I didn't even deserve a conversation, just a verdict. They didn't ask. They decided. That's when I knew I was done being their backup plan. Done being the girl they leaned on only when everything else had crumbled. Growing up in his shadow. Growing up in Dylan's shadow wasn't unusual. It was just normal. While he unwrapped the latest PlayStation on Christmas morning, I got his old console, the one with the sticky buttons and a cracked joystick. When Dylan made the junior varsity basketball team, our parents rearranged their entire work schedules just to be there, front row, every game. When I made the honor roll, 4 years in a row, my mom taped the certificate to the fridge for exactly 3 days before replacing it with Dylan's C+ in English. His first passing grade that semester. Dylan just needs more encouragement, my mom would say when I asked why they never showed up to any of my debate tournaments. You've always been our little adult Camille, she'd add. Like it was a compliment. Little adult. Code for, we don't need to worry about you, so we don't. Even in the silence, the message was loud and clear. But despite being overlooked, I pushed forward. I worked harder. I became the responsible one. Not because I wanted to, but because someone had to be. While he fell apart, I built a life. Even with the constant ache of being unseen, I didn't stop moving forward. I couldn't. While Dylan dropped out of state college after just 3 semesters, a school our parents paid for in full, I worked 2 jobs just to afford community college. I earned scholarships. I graduated with honors. No applause, no banners, just quiet, steady progress. Eventually, I landed a solid job at a financial consulting firm. I climbed the ladder slowly, one rung at a time. And by the time I turned 30, I had done something no one in my family had expected. I bought my first home. It wasn't extravagant, just a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet, safe neighborhood. But it was mine. Every mortgage payment, every squeaky floorboard fixed, every piece of furniture inside, paid for by me. No family loans, no co-signers, no handouts, just hard work. Meanwhile, Dylan and his wife, Kara, were on financial crisis number. Honestly, I lost count. He cycled through jobs like seasons, always starting with big promises and ending in excuses. Kara's shopping habits only made things worse. And Dylan? He thought he was a financial genius because he dumped $10,000, borrowed from our parents, into some trendy crypto coin he saw hyped on social media. And when that didn't pan out, guess who they came to? Again, the small loans that were never small. Through all of Dylan's disasters, my parents stayed on the same script. They kept bailing him out. Every time he stumbled, they caught him. Every time he failed, They made excuses. And when helping him started to hurt their own finances, they turned to me. "It's just a small loan," my dad would say. "Dylan's going through a rough patch." But those small loans added up fast. $500 here, $1,200 there. Always urgent, always temporary, never repaid. Eventually, I started keeping a spreadsheet. Cold, hard numbers. Over 5 years, I had loaned my brother more than $15,000. $15,000. Money I knew I'd never see again. And it wasn't just me noticing the pattern. At family gatherings, my aunts and uncles started making comments. Some subtle, some not. "So generous of you to help your brother out again," my aunt would say, wine glass in hand, eyes narrowing just a little too much. My uncle? He was blunt. "Must be nice, Dylan, having a sister with deep pockets." Some of us had to figure life out the hard way. I'd laugh it off, smile, say nothing, and I kept showing up. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, the occasional weeknight visit when mom called and said, "It's been too long since we've seen you." I'd show up after a 10-hour workday to find Dylan and Kara already there, feet up on the coffee table, drinking the wine I brought last time like it was owed to them. Every visit chipped away at me, and I didn't even realize how close I was to the edge until the night I fell right off it, served up without a say. Then came the dinner, the one that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening in October. I was bone tired after closing a major account at work, the kind of day that drains you to the core. When I walked into my parents' house, the smell of lasagna hit me, the homemade kind, my favorite since I was little. That should have been the first red flag. My mom didn't make lasagna unless she wanted something. Dylan's car was in the driveway. So was Kara's leased BMW, the one she definitely couldn't afford. At first, dinner seemed normal. Dylan dominated the conversation as usual, rambling about his latest business idea, house flipping. Because apparently, watching HGTV for 2 weeks had made him an expert. Kara showed off her new designer purse, probably worth more than my monthly mortgage. My parents smiled, nodded, clung to every word they said like gospel. I was halfway through my second glass of wine when my mom cleared her throat. "So, we've been talking," she said, glancing at my dad for backup, "about Dylan and Kara's situation." My stomach tightened. Here it comes, I thought. Another loan request. They've been struggling since the rent went up. And now, with the baby coming, I froze. Baby? That was the first I'd heard of it. Kara hadn't mentioned a thing. So, my mother continued, her voice breezy, like she was suggesting takeout. "We've come up with a solution. They'll be moving into your house next month." I blinked. "You can take the smaller bedroom," she added, "or just move back in with us for a while." The fork in my hand paused midair. My stomach dropped like I'd been pushed off a ledge. "My house. It makes perfect sense," my dad chimed in. "You've got 3 bedrooms. You don't need all that space to yourself." "Oh," Kara chimed in, already scrolling on her phone. "I found the perfect nursery set for the front bedroom. You know, the one with the bay window." My bay window. My house. Paid for with my sweat, my savings, my 60-hour weeks. "This way, you won't have to worry about maintaining such a big place alone," my mom said, patting my hand like she was doing me a favor. "It's really the most practical solution." They weren't asking. They had already decided. As if my home, my life, was just another family resource to hand out. Something inside me broke. But I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I smiled. "Sure," I said, voice steady. "That makes sense. Were you thinking they'd move in?" The relief at the table was instant. My mom exhaled. My dad smiled. Dylan and Kara exchanged a smug little glance. "The first of the month," Dylan said. "That gives you about 3 weeks. 3 weeks to erase the life I built?" "Perfect," I said, sipping my wine to hide the shaking in my hands. "I'll start packing this weekend." And just like that, I made a new plan. One they'd never see coming. Smile for the camera. The setup begins. The rest of that dinner felt like I was sleepwalking. I nodded when I was supposed to. Laughed when the moment called for it. Smiled when Kara described another part of my house she planned to upgrade. It was like watching strangers strip my life down piece by piece and being expected to thank them for it. When I finally got to my car, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. My throat burned from holding back everything I wanted to scream. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over. Parked on the side of a dark street, I sat there, engine running, heart racing, and let the dam burst. I screamed, a raw, guttural cry into the steering wheel that left my throat hoarse and my soul gutted. Then I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and made the decision that changed everything. If they wanted my house so badly, they could have it, but not the way they expected. 2 months earlier, my company had offered me a promotion, a big one, senior consultant, with a 35% salary bump. The only catch, I'd have to relocate to Chicago. At the time, I'd hesitated. The idea of putting distance between me and my family had felt impossible. I was still tethered to them, even after everything. But that night, that tether finally snapped. At exactly 11:30 p.m., I called my boss. I'll take the Chicago position, I said, skipping the pleasantries. He sounded stunned. That's fantastic, Camille. When can you start? How soon do you need me? The sooner the better. The Hawkins account's falling apart without leadership. 3 weeks, I said. I'll be there in 3 weeks. Same timeline they gave me to vacate my own house. Poetic, don't you think? The exit strategy. The next morning, I made the first move. I didn't call the family realtor, the one who always reported back to my parents. I found someone discreet, a sharp, no-nonsense woman from the next town over. Someone with no ties to my family and no interest in gossip. We listed my house at a price just under market value, competitive enough to spark quick offers. I want it gone fast. No room for delays, no time for second guesses. Photos went live on Friday. By Monday, I had 3 offers. By Wednesday, I'd accepted an all-cash deal with a 21-day close. It was all coming together like it was meant to. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. To my family, I played the role of the cooperative, selfless daughter. I mentioned clearing out furniture to make space for the nursery. The moving boxes? Explained away as decluttering. I asked Kara what paint color she liked. Curtains, wallpaper patterns, nursery themes. She came over to plan the layout. Walked through my house like she already owned it. Pointed out where her massive sectional would go, which walls she'd paint over, and how she planned to rip out my little vegetable garden because, her words, it's not really my aesthetic. Every smug comment made it easier to pack. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I dismantled my life like a woman on a mission. I moved my money to a new bank, one my parents didn't know about. I left just enough in the old accounts to avoid raising suspicions. I signed a lease for an apartment in Chicago. Remotely. Quietly. I redirected all my mail to a P.O. box in the city. I sold what furniture I couldn't take and packed the rest into a storage unit, registered under a different name. 3 days before closing, I took what I called a business trip. It wasn't. It was a flight to Chicago to finalize my new apartment and get the keys in hand. I flew back just in time to sign the closing papers, pick up the cashier's check, and load my final boxes into a U-Haul. While Dylan and Kara were counting down the days to move into my house, I was already 300 miles away, starting over. The vanishing act. On what was supposed to be their moving day, I was already 300 miles away, unpacking boxes in my new apartment, high above downtown Chicago. The windows overlooked Lake Michigan, the water glinting under a gray morning sky. I stood in the living room, surrounded by silence. No footsteps, no demands, no chaos, just peace. On the kitchen counter, my phone buzzed like a warning siren. Over and over. Calls, texts, voicemails. I didn't answer. Instead, I imagined the scene unfolding back home. Dylan and Kara pulling up with a moving truck, maybe with my parents in tow, ready to help them settle into what they believed was their new home, only to find strangers carrying furniture through the front door. The new owners, polite but firm, explaining they had just purchased the house for me. No, I didn't know anything about a family move-in. Yes, the sale was final. No, they didn't know where I'd gone. I let myself savor the mental image. 4 stunned faces standing on the front lawn, confusion twisting into panic. My phone buzzed again. My mom's voice filled the voicemail box, shifting from confused to furious, then to desperate. Camille, how could you do this to us? To your brother? Where are they supposed to go now? Call us back. You need to call us back. The next message came with a tearful edge. Please, we can fix this. Just tell us where you are. After 2 full days, I finally responded. One text. Simple. Clean. Final. The same place I was supposed to go, I guess. Figure out. Then I blocked every number. The block list grows. It didn't stop with my parents. Soon, the rest of the family started circling like vultures. My cousin Rachel was first. You've always been jealous of Dylan, she texted. This is a new low, even for you. Block. Then came a message from Uncle Dean. Your grandfather would be ashamed of your selfishness. Block. Aunt Carol chimed in next. Your mother hasn't stopped crying since you pulled this stunt. Is that what you wanted? Block. 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 One by one, I erased them. Deleted the weight. Shut the door. Every message felt like a hand trying to pull me back underwater, and with every block, I could breathe a little easier. 2 weeks into my silence, my former colleague Jen texted me. She'd never been close with my family, but she was close enough to have caught wind of the drama. So, your brother and his pregnant wife are living in your parents' basement now. Your mom's telling people you had some kind of breakdown. Just thought you should know. I didn't reply, but I didn't block her either. Jen became my only window into the crumbling little world I'd walked away from, watching the collapse from a distance. About a month later, Jen texted me again. Remember that crypto thing Dylan was obsessed with? Turns out he put in way more than anyone realized. Like, a lot more. I wasn't surprised. Dylan always had a gift for diving headfirst into bad decisions and dragging others down with him. But what did surprise me was what came next. He convinced my parents to invest their retirement savings into that same crypto scam, promising them guaranteed returns. 40% gains in 6 months. When the market took a nosedive, Dylan panicked. Instead of cutting his losses, he doubled down, took out payday loans, maxed out 2 credit cards in my parents' names. Cards they didn't even know existed until the debt collectors started calling. By month 3, it had all collapsed. The cryptocurrency was exposed as part of a larger scam. Dylan was being investigated for some sketchy side hustle tied to the scheme. My parents, now nearly broke, took out a second mortgage on their home just to keep the walls from closing in. Kada, she was threatening to leave him, pregnant and furious. And me, I felt a pang. Not for Dylan, not for my parents, but for the baby, the one about to be born into all that chaos. So, I did the only thing my heart would allow. I mailed an anonymous gift card to a baby supply store, sent it to Kara's mother's address. It was my one quiet act of compassion, the only thread of guilt I allowed myself to feel. Then I moved on. The letter that broke me in the best way. My new life in Chicago was everything I hadn't let myself believe I deserved. The job? It stretched me in the best ways. Intellectually, professionally, even emotionally. I was finally doing work that mattered, with people who saw me for who I was, not what I could provide. I made friends, real friends, ones who didn't know about Dylan or my parents, or how I'd spent most of my life playing the role of the forgotten daughter. To them, I wasn't backup. I wasn't second choice. I was Camille, confident, capable, whole. 6 months after I disappeared from their world, I received a letter, forwarded from my old P.O. box. The return address made my heart skip. My grandfather's nursing home. Inside, written in shaky but familiar handwriting, was a single page that undid me in the quietest, most profound way. Camille, I've heard what happened. Your mother tells her version, but I suspect the truth lies somewhere far closer to what you did than what she says. I always knew you were the strong one, the smart one. I'm sorry I let your parents convince me that Dylan needed more help in the will. They told me you'd always land on your feet, while he needed the safety net. But now I see, it was you who needed protection all along. I've changed my will. It's not much, but it's yours. I'm proud of you for walking away, for standing up for yourself. Love, Grandpa. I read it 3 times before I let myself cry. Not out of grief or regret, but because for the first time in my life, someone in my family truly saw me. A name, a bridge, a new chapter. 9 months after I walked away, the baby was born. A girl. Jen texted me, casually slipping the news between work updates and memes. They named her Camille. She wrote. Apparently, Kara said it was her way of extending an olive branch. I sat with that for a long time, not sure how to feel. It didn't change what had happened. Didn't erase the years of being overlooked, used, discarded. But I couldn't ignore the child. She hadn't asked for this family. She hadn't inherited their patterns, only their last names and their chaos. So, I did what I believed the best version of myself would do. I sent another anonymous gift. This time, it wasn't just a gesture. It was a savings bond, one that would mature when little Camille turned 18. Attached was a small, handwritten note. For college. No strings attached. That was it. I wasn't coming back. I wasn't rekindling old relationships. But the child didn't deserve to suffer for the mess her parents created. She deserved a chance, even if her last name was the same one that had once drowned me. One last call from the past. Right around the 1-year mark, my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Camille. My mother's voice was quiet, fragile, like she was holding it together by a thread. I didn't respond. I just waited. Please, don't hang up, she said quickly. We need help. I said nothing. She kept going, her words tumbling out in a breathless rush. Your father had a minor heart attack last month. He's home now, but the medical bills are, well, we're drowning. And Dylan and Kara and the baby are still living here. We can't, Camille, we're about to lose the house. My old self would have jumped into action, started calculating, started sacrificing. But that girl was gone. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, my voice even. I hope Dad recovers quickly. That's it. Her voice cracked. Your family is falling apart, and that's all you have to say? I paused, then answered the question she didn't realize she was asking. What would you like me to say, Mom? That I'll fix it? Again? That I'll hand over my life to clean up another mess I didn't create? Silence. You're our family, she whispered, as if saying it softly might make it true. No, I said. I was never really your family. I was Dylan's backup plan. The safety net. The one who could be forgotten because she'd always land on her feet. She drew in a sharp breath. Who told you that? Does it matter? I asked. You all believed it. There was nothing left to say. So I gave her the only kindness I had left. I have to go. Take care of yourself. Then I hung up and blocked the number. The fire I built for myself. That evening, my company offered me another promotion. This time, it came with a passport. They wanted to send me to our international office in London. And for the first time in my life, I didn't hesitate. I didn't pause to consider how far it would take me from home, because I'd already learned home wasn't a place. It was peace. It was freedom. The next night, I sat on my Chicago balcony, sipping a glass of red wine, the city glowing behind me. The lake shimmered in the distance, moonlight dancing across the surface. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who kept showing up, hoping to finally be seen. The one who bent herself into impossible shapes just to fit in a family that never made room for her. That girl had burned herself out trying to keep others warm. But she was gone now, and in her place stood a woman who understood that real love doesn't ask you to disappear. That setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. That sometimes walking away isn't abandonment, it's rescue. I'd lost a family, but I'd found myself. And honestly, that was the better trade. I raised my glass to the sky, to new beginnings, to the word no, to the kind of freedom that only comes when you finally decide to stop being someone else's foundation and start building your own future. My phone buzzed beside me, a text from my new flatmate in London confirming my arrival time. Tomorrow, I'd board a plane to a new city, a new chapter, a new life. They had expected me to burn myself to the ground to keep them warm. Instead, I built my own fire, and I was never stepping into the cold again. For anyone who's ever been the backup plan, if you've ever been the one they leaned on, but never the one they showed up for, if you've been praised for your strength, just so they could keep piling more weight on your shoulders, if you've ever watched someone else get everything handed to them, while you earned every inch of your life the hard way, then you already know. You know the ache of being reliable, the exhaustion of being self-sufficient, the loneliness of being the strong one. But you also know the power of choosing yourself. Because there comes a moment, a quiet, seismic moment, when you realize you don't owe anyone your peace. You don't have to play the role they wrote for you. You are allowed to walk away from people who only call you when they're falling. You are allowed to stop setting yourself on fire just to keep others warm. And when that moment comes, don't apologize. Don't explain. Just walk away. Build your life. Build your fire. And never look back. To anyone listening right now, maybe you see yourself in Camille's story. Maybe you've been the dependable one, the peacemaker, the fixer. Maybe you've been the afterthought in someone else's spotlight. And maybe you've never told anyone how tired you are. This is your reminder. You don't have to keep sacrificing your happiness for people who wouldn't do the same for you. You don't have to wait for permission to live your own life. You get to choose peace. You get to choose distance. You get to choose you. Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is walk away with your head held high and never look back. If this story hit home, you're not alone. And if you're ready to rewrite your own chapter, start today. Start small. Start scared. But start. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.